So hello, very welcome to this tutorial. We're gonna go to discuss about a little bit of transitions here. Transition means that a text or anything else basically changes into the next state while the user can see the whole process. So during this video, we will watch that if you set a text in React Native, it just immediately appear and the previous text will be removed. But what we want to achieve is basically to have some kind of transition from opacity 1 to 0 and then change the text and then show it again. So it's going to have kind of a feeling that smoothly changing the text with some steps is going to be very, very interacting with user and kind of like touching the eye. So without further ado, let's go to the project. Before we do that is one thing to mention. I have created a project, a very empty project in React Native. So basically you could have the same, it comes with the template, TypeScript template. So if you want to follow along, you can create your own project. And if it's TypeScript, you should be very well on the road. So if you do not have much of an experience on React Native, does not matter. You can just learn this and consume it in your very, very simple projects. So what we see here is in the main component, I have an app and it has only a text. So what I'm trying to do is to change this text randomly into multiple different things. So let's call a set of messages. I want to have a set of messages that we are working on it. And then it is gonna be ready in a few minutes. Stay put. It's loading. Will be done in few seconds. Okay. So these messages could be used if there is like a 1 minute processing going on and you don't really know the percentage. So you want to show different kind of text to the user that they do not feel, okay, this is stuck forever. You know, like if you just show a text or it's spinning after 30 seconds, user is very tired. So changing this text will give them kind of feeling that something really going on and the app is not stuck. So what I'm going to do is to set a timer, a fake timer that is gonna pick one of these messages and show it to the user. So let's say use effect and then interval and then each 2.5 seconds for our purpose. We're gonna set text to a message. Well, I put this commented for now because I need to explain a couple of things before that. And then we want to actually remove the reference when the hook is exiting. So if it's going to be destroyed, we want to have a clear interval, the reference. Okay, lots of times I see that people do not clear the set timeout or interval references. Set interval and set timeout are returning a number. So this number is referencing to the queue internally to the timer. So anytime you're exiting the component, make sure you just close all subscriptions. In our case, this is actually one of these subscriptions, the main subscription that changes the text. So you don't want to change the component's text, especially when is not mounted anymore. So in order to change this hi welcome here that we see here in this area, I want to create a state for it and call that text and then set text and use state and then we call it hi welcome instead of here hi welcome, and we will replace this with actually text. Okay, so one thing we need to do is that we save this and we want to pick randomly one of these messages and put it in here. There's a library called Lodash, and probably in every project you work on it, on like arrays and objects, it's like very useful to use this library. And it has a function called sample. So what sample does, basically, it takes an array as an input and then takes one of the items randomly out. So it just makes it much easier rather than you count the array and then get a random number and pick that. This just does it for you. So what I'm going to do is, instead of message, I want to call sample from Lodash and then give messages inside. So each time it could be this, or the last one, or this one, and it's just changing. And we're gonna hit save, and hopefully it's gonna start changing some stuff in here as we see the document. Okay, what is interesting in here is that you see the text is being changed like immediately, and it doesn't feel the user that something happening underneath, because in the real world everything is happening with transition. So if something drops from a tree, like this apple, Isaac picked it up, everything is with transition. You don't see like you drop something and it's here and then all of a sudden it's here. So because of that, people feel something natural if it has some kind of animation, if it has some kind of transition. That's what our main goal here is. So for that purpose, I'm gonna go and create a new component, and we're gonna use that component instead of the text. So it's kind of like superior to the text. We're gonna wrap the text and it will work like 100% like text, but when the transition is happening, it's just gonna keep the old text and then show the newer one with opacity. So let's go and create a folder, and let's call it components. Then in this components, I want to have something called animated text.tsx, and then I want to export function animated text, and I'm gonna return a text here and React Native, and let's call this text, and text equals to an string. So we will put this text in here, and then style equals to style, and the style is basically style equals to text style. So all of those things defined by a React Native as properties of text, like those styles for the text, called text style. So we just want to get everything from the component which calling this animated text and pass it this text, so it's not going to be losing any kind of styling that the user really wants to apply to it. And let's go back to our app, and what we are going to do is call this instead animated text. And instead of putting that as a child, I like to put it as a property called text. So we don't see much of a difference in the code section, basically the result, because we just wrapped it up here. But all the magic now happens inside this component. What we want to do is basically not to replace the text immediately when the props is changed. We just want to know that, okay, there is a new text. We want to set the opacity of the current object to 0. And then we apply the text and then increase the opacity to 1. So that's going to be kind of a feeling that, okay, it's changing now very smoothly. In order to do that, we need to have the same text state inside this animation, because imagine if you wanted to use the text immediately, it's already changed, so we can't really use that. And I want to call this inner text instead of text because it's just coming from the properties. And we always want to show inner text instead, and then we want to have a use effect for that, which listens to the text changes and then sets the text as text. Okay, so far probably nothing has changed. It just gets the text and puts it in. Now we need to create our animation for that, and that's the fun part of it. So let's call this animation, and then I want to use a reference for it, and it's gonna be a new animated dot value, which is, let's say, 1. And here we want to keep the style and go add opacity animation dot current. Interesting is that you see there is an error here, and that's because we have imported the text from the React Native text. For any kind of animations, we need to have the animated.text, animated.view. So let's go and fix that real quick, and it's gonna be animated.text, and it's gonna be animated.text here as well. All right, so far still the result is the same in eyes of the user. One thing we need to do is now let's go and change the animation for it when the text is coming. So at this moment, let's say first moment, the text has been changed. So we need to transition the component to 0 in like 300 milliseconds. Let's say transition to 0. So in order to transition to 0, we need to call animated.timing, and then we give the reference to it, current. And then here we have some options. ToValue 0, use native driver true, and duration 300 milliseconds. And then easing is easing.linear. So I'd like to explain a little bit about these parameters. So ToValue is from what we are going to what. Usually it's 0 to 1. So you could put like 0 to 100, or you could put 0 to 20. Sometimes it's useful when you're doing object movements or scaling animations, and that's the value you want to reach to it by end of the animation. Duration is very obvious, like how long you want to this transition to happen. Let's say you want to tell your friend count to 10 in 10 seconds, or count to 10 in 2 seconds. So things are happening much faster. Using native driver is kind of a thing that tells React Native the animation rendering is not happening on JavaScript side, it's happening on the native level. For us as React Native developer, it's just important to know that those parameters that we could have animated by native driver, we should do. For example, opacity. Some of them are not available using the native driver. It doesn't make sense. For example, the sizes, like height and things like that. We could use basically translate and scaling there. This is something we will get to it later in another video. But just remember that use native driver, always true, even if you think it's just working smoothly on your device. And easing as the last parameter is something that tells kind of the animation how the values is gonna be fluctuating. So if it's linear, it's just in the first second and the last second, there's kind of a linear line how it's calculated. if you have kind of like a Bezier, you could have kind of curvature that it goes very fast in the beginning and then it just goes slowly, or vice versa. You could have such a different kind of function that calculates that, or even write your own function. Let's go here, and one thing we need to not forget about is to start the animation. And now, after all these things happen, we need to change the inner text. So let's call set text. Basically, we have it here. And then what we want to do is to get it back to 1, and user will see that, basically, the change. So one thing we forgot to do is we need to kind of understand that it's very important, the order of the thing here, and you want the text to be changed right after animation is finished. So let's go and put it in a timeout instead. And I'm gonna put this in a timeout and then call it like 300. And then we're gonna switch to animation value 1, and this is gonna do the job as we kinda expected. Okay, and the last thing we might be need to doing is add basically the rest of the parameters. So when you are overriding or creating your own component, you always want to make it very similar to what is already in React Native, not to lose the parameters. So what I'm saying is basically, for example, if we come here and then press Control I, we don't see any other of the options that the text itself had before. So we are losing all of those values. In order to have that, we can call this as a rest, and then put this and operator and text props. So one last bit is we need to give the rest parameters here. And now if you go back, we see that we could pass all of these parameters natively to the object, and that's very important. Okay, I'm going to do a refresh to the app, and we will see the result that, let's see, it's changing with very good transition. Like it will be done in a few minutes, it's going to be ready in stay put. Then we could play a bit maybe with these easing options, and let's call it sine, like sinus. See how it's gonna make it a bit different. Sometimes for kind of animations, we need refreshing the app. So you see that there is kind of a bouncing and different kind of animations. You could always play with them and get the best result that fits to that current scope. One note to all of these things, do not overuse the animations. They are not necessary everywhere. It's just sometimes when the text is the main component of the screen, this would be very, very helpful. Or maybe you find it that you could use it and in many places, just make sure it does not add up to the loading time of the user more than 200 milliseconds. So I see sometimes like user needs to wait like 3 seconds because there are 5-6 elements transitioning in, and it just adds an extra time. Nobody wants to spend such time even in games on a specific app. All right, I'm very happy that you watched until here, and I hope you will give it a thumbs up if you liked it. If you have some comments you see could be done in a better way, just share with me and the others, and see you very soon. Don't forget about Academy in the pixelplux.com. I put all of these contents there. It's just kind of a place that all of them will be available, and kind of an investment going on there on the content to bring some quality information for you. See you in the next video, and wish you a great day or night.